Okay, welcome all to the September 19th, 2023 Long Range Planning Committee, known as LRPC, and the Zoning Committee, ZOCO, the hybrid meeting on the Sanitary Sewer Master Plan update and the Plan Langton Boulevard General Land Use Plan, that's the BLUP, and the zoning ordinance amendments. We will be holding a hybrid public meeting which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy that was adopted on July 7th, 2023. Do we have any planning commissioners, people at the table who are to be at the table who are participating remotely? If so, can you raise your virtual hand?
See
I
anyone,
don't
Mr. Chair.
see any. Yes, okay. Well, that's not.
Mr. Gilroy, I don't believe that's.
Consultant, okay, he's staff. Okay, good. And if there's anybody on the phone, a planning commissioner who's on the phone, you can star 6 and say so now. Anyway, okay. The planning commission's committees, including the LRPC and ZOCO, provide comments to staff to help shape land use policies and zoning regulations prior to formal consideration and public hearings with the planning commission. For any final action on amendments to the county's general land use plan or zoning ordinance, the planning commission and the county board will each hold 2 public hearings. First round of hearings will set the scope of what the amendments are advertised, and the second round will consider whether to adopt those amendments. At this time, I'd like to orient everyone to our hybrid environment and cover a few specifics about how tonight's meeting will be run. Tonight's agenda will consist of 2 separate meetings on the subject agenda items. First portion of the agenda will be dedicated to LRPC discussion of the Sanitary Sewer Master Plan update, followed by public comment for that agenda item. Once the public comment period is concluded, I'll adjourn that meeting. The second portion of the agenda will be dedicated to LRPC and ZOCO discussion on the planned Langston Boulevard General Land Use Plan and Zoning Ordinance Amendment, followed by public comment. That will be chaired by my fellow commissioner, Sarli, who is here next to me in person. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the LRPC web pages, the county's events calendar, and the email notification sent to LRPC email subscribers. Additionally, there's a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. Virtually. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed. I will address when it's appropriate to turn it on in a moment. The Microsoft Teams meeting chat is active to serve 2 purposes: for participants who need technical assistance and for other attendees, for example, members of the public, to pose brief clarifying questions to the larger audience. While these will be monitored, they will not be formally acknowledged. The Teams chat should not be used for discussion or any inappropriate statements. Those who are planning to provide public comments will still need to do so at the end, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. As mentioned, there will be 2 periods of public comment tonight, which will follow after discussion of each agenda item. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony periods. I would also like to remind everyone in the room to speak up slowly and clearly and point to the mic. See, the microphones are above us here. That's what we need to talk to. So everybody who is online will be able to hear us. In addition, if you'd like to share your screen, please request permission from the LRPC chair prior to doing so. And unlike the Planning Commission's regular meetings, the LRPC and ZOCO agenda items are not public hearings, and therefore public comment is at the LRPC and the chair's discretion after the committee discussion has concluded. I am exercising the discretion, both of us are exercising that discretion, so there will be public comment at the end of each of these 2 agenda items. You will be called on at the end of the LRPC or ZOCO discussion to speak on each of tonight's agenda items. The speaking time allotted will depend on the number of speakers we have this evening. Maximum time will be 2 minutes. If there's a lot of people, it could be shorter. I will call for speakers at each agenda item, and I will ask the staff to let me know if we have any virtual attendees who'd like to provide comment. Staff will acknowledge speakers in the Teams chat. So please indicate in the chat that you'd like to provide comment, and your name will be added to our list of speakers. Members of the public attending virtually will speak first, followed by in-person attendees. When virtual attendees are called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meetings on the meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you, but you will be muted when your time has concluded. As an alternative, public comment is available and may be provided on the public comment form posted on the LRPC and ZOCO web pages. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county's website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Before we do anything further, why don't we go around the room and introduce ourselves?
My name is Leo Sarli. I'm with the Planning Commission and I am chair of the ZOCO.
And I'm Jim Lantelmi, member of the Planning Commission, and I'm chairing the LRPC.
Kelly Brown, I'm a member of staff in comprehensive planning.
John Lawler, I'm Chief Support Engineer at Water Sewer Streets. I'm here to present the Sanitary Sewer Master Plan update. Eric Berkey, member of the Planning Commission.
Drea Gowan, I'm a follower. Rana Bogazale, Principal Planner, CPHD.
And why don't we go to a room for people who are here?
Marcia Drick, UUCA of Arlington, voice.
Alice Toole, Clarendon Presbyterian and with voice.
Jennifer Huckabone, Clarendon Presbyterian, also with voice.
I'm Tim Dugan. I'm a land use attorney with Bean, Kinney and Corbin.
And
Jolene Pillsbury, Palisades Park and North Island Civic.
Hi, Aaron Roberts, Palisades Park and North Island Civic Association.
nobody hiding behind them. Oh, I did.
Nice.
Okay, very good. Now that that's done, why don't we move on to our first agenda item, which is the sanitary sewer master plan. First thing we will do is have the staff discussion. So take it away. It's all yours.
Thanks. Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Presentation up. Okay. So I'm John, like I said earlier, I'm John Lawler, Chief Support Engineer at Water Sewer Streets. Water Sewer Streets, we're a Bureau of DES in Arlington County, and we maintain basically 1,058 lane miles of streets. We maintain about 443 miles of sidewalks, and storm sewer system, wastewater sewer system, and the drinking water system. So I'll start by just explaining, what is a sanitary sewer? Basically, all the water that goes down the drains in your house, the shower drain, the toilet, the sinks, the appliances like the washing machine, all that goes through your sanitary sewer lateral out and connects to the sanitary sewer main, and then eventually it ends up at our water treatment plant down South Lee Road near 4 Mile Run. So basically, all the water you use ends up in the sanitary sewer system. There's a lot of key differences between a sanitary sewer and a storm sewer. In Arlington, we do not have any combined sewer systems. All our sanitary is totally separate from our storm sewers. Storm sewer only takes in the water, rainwater, and the runoff and all that. And the groundwater that seeps over. Like DC, Alexandria, they have a lot of sections where they combine sewer systems. That's why they have to build those massive tunnels underground that cost billions. So we don't have any of those issues to build that stuff. Another key difference is just size. Our smallest and most normal size sanitary sewer is only 8 inches diameter, whereas our smallest storm sewer system or storm sewer that we maintain is about 15 inches. So you might say, well, that's the sanitary sewer is about half the size of the storm, but that's actually not true. Just based on like geometrics, the carrying capacity of 15-inch pipe carries about 5 times what an 8-inch pipe carries. So the storm sewer can carry a lot more flow than the sanitary sewer. So the sanitary is only really supposed to carry what the residents are using. Another difference is storm sewers are usually more shallow. Whereas sanitary sewers are much deeper in the roadway because we have to pick up basements and foundation drains and things like that. So it really makes it, much more complex than storm sewers because anytime you have to work deep underground, you need trench boxes, water work areas. Sanitary sewers also have a lot of hazardous waste and gases inside of them, so they're not fun to work in and stuff. Arlington, kind of on the left, you see from the house, there's that little pipe that goes out and connects to the big pipe in the road. So that's known as the sanitary sewer lateral. So in Arlington County, that's privately owned and maintained by the residents. So if they have any issues in that lateral that cause them to back up, they have to hire a plumber. Plumber comes, gets a permit from the county, and then fixes it and stuff. So we don't maintain sewer laterals. So some jurisdictions will have like a clean out kind of sidewalk area, and that's where the public maintenance starts, but that's not. Another thing to point out, there's no meter on a sanitary sewer. In Arlington, meters, they really go wonky and stuff. So we built, people's sewer usage is based on their winter quarter water usage because we need water. And then unless, let's say you lived in Maine over the summer and you didn't use any water, you would get billed based on the lower amount of either your water usage or your winter sanitary, or your winter water usage. Because in the wintertime, you don't do irrigation. So, just one other, a couple other differences. Sanitary sewer pipes, they're usually made out of PVC. Those are like the newer pipes, plastic pipes. Those are resistant to corrosion and things like that. Whereas storm sewers are usually reinforced concrete pipe. But one similarity between sanitary and storm sewers is they both rely on gravity to do all the work. So gravity is great because it's free. We don't need to pump it, use energy. Doesn't cost any money. Doesn't need any maintenance. So basically, almost our entire collection system. That's also why you'll find both of these, both sanitary sewers and storm sewers in people's backyards, their rear yard, side yards, things like that. And we're in the conflict. Sometimes people add additions to their properties, and there's a sanitary sewer that's too close to it and all that. So I think I explained that. I'm here tonight to present the sanitary sewer master plan update. So I'll just kind of give you a background on the master plan, an overview of our wastewater sewer system and our current programs, highlights of this current 2023 master plan update, and then summarize our action plan recommendations. This is one of the 11 elements of the county's comprehensive plan. I know there's soon to be a 12th one coming up with the natural resources one. So, basically the comprehensive plan was established by the county board in 1960. Originally consisted of 5 elements, and sanitary sewers were one of the 5 elements. Really your ability to grow as a county depends on your sewer system and your water system. Those are critical utilities that can really constrain things if they're not planned properly. Basically in Arlington, our sewer system began in 1933 when voters in November of that year voted on a referendum to create a public countywide sanitary sewer system. Prior to that, you just had a few private sewer systems spread out throughout the county. And people either had like septic tanks, or they had outhouses, or they just outfalled private sewers into like streams and things like that. And then the county basically built its whole network over about 4 years, and it built the treatment plant in 1937. So the treatment plant opened in 1937. So it's kind of the origins of our system. Sanitary sewer, like the slide of the comp plan. So it evaluates the master plan evaluates the system facilities, practices, programs, policies, and improvements needed to provide, maintain adequate service into the future. So the most recent update was adopted by the board in 2002. So this is a planning level document. The primary goal is to be updating growth and development forecasts in the county, looking at our capacity assessment to make sure capacity sufficient to provide for the demands, identify where we need system improvements, then evaluate our ongoing rehab, operations, and maintenance efforts. So in our new master plan, these are our new goals and objectives. So overall goal is to guide future programs to maintain the gravity sewer system such that it continues to operate reliably and remains a valuable resource to county residents. Our objectives are that in the master plan, our objectives are that we describe the sanitary sewer collection system. We document the ongoing programs and improvements undertaken by the county to maintain and update the gravity sewer system to serve the needs of the residents and ensure continuous service. Identify and address any portions of the gravity sanitary sewer system that do not have sufficient capacity for existing and projected future peak wastewater flow demands. Recommend potential programs to address current or future capacity issues, backups and emergencies, optimize operation efficiency, and improve service reliability. Recommend potential programs to maintain or reduce the rates of groundwater infiltration, stormwater inflow entering the public and private sewers to reduce treatment and pumping costs, conserve capacity, and improve overall system performance. And finally, recommend an action plan to improve the condition of the system and ensure that it operates effectively, safely, and efficiently. So I'll start by giving an overview of the sanitary sewer system. So it consists of 459 miles of gravity sewers. Basically a gravity sewer consists of a sewer main, and then it's connected on both sides by manholes. So we have about approximately 15,000 manholes. This is not part of the plan. We have 15 sewer lift stations and about 4 miles of force mains. A lift station is basically a force main is a pressurized sewer that you'll see a lot of those up on Military Road where you have these big hills up and down. So you can't, by gravity, you can't go up a hill. So you need to pump that up the hill. So that's what that is. You look at the map there, the cyan area, that's the section of Arlington County that is outfalls to DC Blue Plains treatment plant. So that's about 1 MGD a day goes over there. Blue Plains, that's located across from National Harbor over at that southwest tip of DC. So there's all of DC brings it all the way over there. We just pay a fee for that. The orange areas are where Fairfax County, Falls Church, and Alexandria outfall to Arlington County's wastewater treatment plant. So that's that magenta square at the very bottom, southern tip of the county over Route 1, South Cleveland Road, that area, 4 Mile Run. So our partners are Fairfax County. We call them interjurisdictional partners: Fairfax County, Falls Church, and Alexandria. There's a lot of basically the big area of Fairfax County that outfalls to Arlington is the Route 7 corridor. So there's a lot of great growth potential there along between Bailey's Crossroads and Seven Corners. So they're always interested in pursuing new capacity and things like that. We have about 37,000 sewer billing accounts. Let's see, there's only 38 properties left in the county that remain on septic tanks. Many of these really aren't possible to convert to the gravity sewer system just because of just the topography where they're located. A lot of them are right off that ridge off the GW Parkway and some of the largest houses in the county. So they would need to basically create private force mains to connect to our system. We'll talk a little bit about our organizational structure. Water Sewer Streets, basically the primary crews that maintain the system. We have 4 flushing crews, 2 sewer construction crews, and 3 CCTV crews. So that's basically what keeps our system going. The CCTV crews and the sewer construction crews, they split their time between maintaining storm sewers and maintaining sanitary sewers that they're built out accordingly and stuff. We have to augment our internal staff with contractors. So we have a flushing contractor, a sewer repair contractor, and a sewer rehab contractor. And just in general on the map there, for the non-Blue Plains area, all that, like I said, all that drains down south, basically north to south, down to the magenta square. Really primarily via 3 major interceptor sewers. You got the Potomac interceptor that flows through the Spout Run Parkway, then down through Roslyn under those buildings, and then down the Arlington National Cemetery, that goes down Army Navy Drive, and then down South East straight to the plant. It's a very large sewer. Then you also have the Long Branch Relief Sewer. That's basically runs along Washington Boulevard south of Route 50, goes through Fort Myer, and then ends up connecting down to the Potomac Interceptor. Then lastly, you have the 4 Mile Run Relief, 4 Mile Run Interceptor sewers that just run basically all the way down 4 Mile Run, all the way from East Falls Church down at the treatment plant. So those are kind of we call them, sewers are kind of like roadway networks. We have arterial streets, collectors, and local streets. So in sewers, you have your interceptors are your arterial sewers. Trunk sewers are kind of your collectors, and then the sewer mains are your local ones. So basically, everything under 15, like 8 inches to 12 inches in diameter, that's your local. 15 inches up to like 30 inches, that's your trunk, and then everything above 30 inches diameter is the interceptor. So we'll talk about common sources of sanitary sewer infiltration. This is really critical in sanitary sewers because because like I mentioned, they're smaller than storm sewers, so they can get really overwhelmed if you have lots of stormwater and groundwater infiltrating into them. So just kind of, this picture summarizes the blue ones are inflow sources. So that's a lot of old 1930s, 40s, 50s houses in Arlington. They have what's called a foundation drain, and that's connected to their sewer lateral. So the foundation drains to keep groundwater from basically infiltrating into your basement. These houses don't have sump pumps. So that's what they used back then in those days. Nowadays, a new house without a sump pump that's not connected to the sanitary lateral. That sometimes people put illicit connections like roof drains that they plumb into the sanitary sewer system. We'll find those when we do our CCTV stuff. You might have uncapped cleanouts or cleanouts with vents on them to try to relieve odors from the house. And then you also sometimes have faulty manhole covers and frames that aren't watertight, or might have like a hole or two in them to get them open and things like that. That all that allows stormwater to inflow into the system. There's one thing there: storm sewer cross connection. We don't have any of those. The infiltration sources, those are the green ones. Broken wastewater laterals, so cracks. A lot of houses still have their original lateral from when they were built, 80 years ago, and so if they have cracks in that, groundwater is above the lateral line, all that groundwater is getting into our system. Tree roots are really problematic. They love to get into our system and drink that water and get the nutrients in there. And then you sometimes have faulty lateral connections at the main. A lot of our older pipe, their sewer mains in Arlington are concrete pipe, so they have not perfectly watertight joints and stuff like that. All that allows the groundwater to seep into the system and stuff. But you can also get a lot of infiltration at your manhole structures. But basically high I9, that's a problem because when you have big rainstorms, then they can cause backups. Now I'll talk about kind of like the flow conditions in Arlington. So this line graph goes back to like July of 1989, so you can kind of see our monthly flows at the water treatment pollution plant. And so you can see, despite our population greatly increasing over this time, that the flows are generally going down in Arlington. So about almost close to 30 MGD. Basically we're at 30 MGD back in the mid 90s, and now we're down to 22. That's MGD is a billion gallons per day. So that's quite a big reduction. Permitted for 40 MGD, so we have lots of capacity there. We began a really robust sewer line program in 1998. That's intended to reduce that I was just talking about. And so we think that's also had a big impact on reducing flows to the water pollution control plant. As I mentioned earlier, that area in North Arlington that drains to Blue Plains, that's only 1 MGD. So that's only about 5% of our total flow in Arlington. So even though it's a fairly large area, it's almost all just single family houses. So it doesn't generate much sewer flow. And another reason flows are decreasing is because water demand is decreasing. So here I've mapped in the orange the population based on the U.S. Census, those 10 years cycles. And then in blue, that's our water demand. So we get all our water. It comes from the Washington Aqueduct. That's over on DeCarlia treatment over in the very far northwest tip of DC, pretty high ground up there. So we buy all our water from them, and then they pump it to Arlington, and we distribute it in our system. And so all those data points, basically that's our annually what we buy from them on average per day. So you can see that basically like, steady decline in the water use. And a lot of that's based on those low flow fixtures like toilets, appliances, things like that. Basically like 90% of the water used evaporation, things like that. And then there's a few, uses that do have more evaporation, like breweries and cooling towers, things like that. But for the most part, it all just goes down the drain. So now I'll talk about our capital improvement plan. So from our most recent adopted 10-year CIP, which is FY 2023 or 2032, that's what we're in right now. So we're in FY 24. These are the 10-year budget figures for that. The overall utility CIP 10-year budget is about $617 million. So just the sanitary sewer portion is only $65 million. So we're only about 11% of that overall budget. So I'll basically highlight maybe the big four programs: the I&I, large diameter sewer rehab, sewer main replacement program, manhole rehab, our improvements for development, and sewer force main replacement. Those are much smaller programs. The I&I program, like I mentioned, I&I is a big concern for sewer systems because that's what can limit your capacity. So this program consists of trenchlessly relining the sanitary sewer mains that are smaller diameter sanitary sewers, so the 12 inches, 10 inches, 8 inches sewer mains. So basically with this, we put this flexible resin impregnated liner and put it into the existing pipe, and we heat it up with steam, hot water, then it hardens, and then that becomes a fully structural pipe within the existing pipe. And so the existing pipe could just wither away completely and deteriorate, and that new pipe's perfect and they're good. So this is a great technology, and it's just really you're basically replacing pipes, fully replacing pipes with new structural pipes. And in the map on the left, everything in red is where we've already done this. So we've been doing it countywide. And so this technology, it's only 50 years old, so people don't quite know how long it'll last. But all the ones that were done 50 years ago, are still doing just fine, and we've had great success with it. So it's really it's not intrusive really at all to the residents and everything. Whereas if you were to actually dig up the road and replace the sewer main, that'd be very, a couple of weeks of, parking restrictions and lots of dirt and dust. Because like I said, these are very deep systems. So, one nice thing about our I&I program is reducing our overall pipe age. So much of our system was constructed in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. Almost like I think 3/4 of it were constructed in those years. So by now, that's going to be very old. But because we're rehabbing so many of these pipes lining, you can see that in that darker blue line how we're keeping the average pipe age way down. And then we're also just doing a couple percent per year so that we don't end up, now we just did like half the county in 1 year, and then 40 years from now we'd be kind of screwed and stuff. So we're spacing it out really good. So to keep it well maintainable in the future. And then we're basically on track to complete all the small diameter linings by 2031. But then that leaves larger diameter rehab. So that program focuses on pipes that are 15-inch diameter and larger. So these are much more complex. They require these intricate sewer bypasses. So that's what you see on the picture on the right, where we have a sewer bypass, the 4-mile run interceptor sewer there that crosses the 4-mile run trail. So you have the trail temporarily elevated over the bypass. So for the bypasses, these are just above ground. We use pumps to keep the sewer flowing because we got to get that pipe fully dry and cleaned out before we install that liner. So on the left, there's the liner machine. So from large, the CIP program includes inspection and rehabs. In the sewer main replacement program, that's where we have to dig and do replacements. That's typically spot repairs or new mains to solve maybe certain design issues. That includes our stub elimination program. A stub is where you have people connected upstream of a manhole, but there's no manhole. upstream of them. So then there's no way to clean that line to serve those like properties. So we've knocked out a whole bunch of those, but we're still down about 300 or so left. Our minimum sewer diameter size is 8 inches, but we still have some really old 6-inch mains spread out throughout the county. So we're also this program addresses that by upgrading those to 8 inches. 8 inches, you can't line a 6-inch sewer main, so 8 inches is required. So that's another benefit to go to 8 inches. But yeah, sewer main replacements are very challenging because they're just so deep underground. That middle picture in Arlington, that sewer was about 24 feet deep. You kind of see how the whole ground just kind of gave out when we were digging that far. Because there's all kinds of underground streams throughout the county that you don't know about and everything. You end up encountering a bird's nest of dry utilities when you're digging that deep. Those utilities that you have to deal with when you're laying these pipes. It's very challenging. A lot of specialized equipment. The last program I'll cover, that's our manhole rehab program. Manholes are a great source of I&I. So that picture on the left, you can see what's a gusher. That's basically just groundwater just shooting out through those exposed joints in that brick manhole. And so for our manhole rehab program, we just do a spray on epoxy, and then that kind of seals up all those voids and everything, and rehabs the manhole so that the water can't intrude into it. Go over our preventive maintenance program. That's basically our biggest program for our internal staff resources. So this is what we spend most of our time with. We have 4 county crews dedicated to flushing sewer mains. So flushing is really critical because most backups are caused because there's debris in the line, and then people's flow can't get there. Then it backs up the houses and all that, and they call the county and everything. So then you go back out, flush the main, and then it fixes the problem. So these preventive maintenance areas, these are where we have to flush on a frequent cycle. And so they're really made up of three programs: grease, trouble, and tree root. Grease, those are all in a 1 month or 3 month cycle. Trouble can be 30, 90, 180 days. Tree roots aren't on a cycle, they're just on a 5-year cycle, where the ones with tree root issues, first we basically take a root cutting nozzle and put it on our flushing our flusher, and then we cut all the roots out of it, and then we put a root inhibiting foam into it. And every 5 years, then we go back and apply that foam. That prevents the tree roots from, or it discourages them from getting into the sewer main, messing up and stuff. The grease, that's obvious. That's just where restaurants or caterers are dumping a bunch of grease down the drain, and then it blocks up the sewer main, so we have to flush all that out and vacuum it. Troubles are usually where we have poor slopes. So if you don't have a steep enough slope for your sewer main, the solids can settle at the bottom, and then that causes a blockage. So those are ones that we have to flush for that. So here's some maps just to kind of illustrate the areas. So the grease areas are primarily in your Roslyn Boston corridor, Shirlington, Columbia Pipe corridor, Glebe Road corridor. Anytime you have greasy restaurants, that's kind of where you find these. Arlington County passed a fats, oils, and grease ordinance in January 2022. So that's, it's so new, but it seems like it's making it. Right now, we're just kind of getting off the ground. All the restaurants have to register into this platform called Swift Comply and report their grease traps and their inspections, things like that. And so hopefully that will help reduce grease areas. But then you also see just kind of random red lines throughout the county. And so on those, we're investigating, trying to see which house is contributing to this problem, because obviously it's somebody running like a catering business or something like that at this house. And then now we'll look at trouble. Like I said, these are the ones with the inadequate slopes where you're just not getting that self-cleansing velocity. So they're just kind of spread out all throughout the county. And so, by keeping these on our, frequent cycle, we can backups by servicing these often. So our other major programs, a grid program. So basically, we spend so much time on these preventive maintenance sewers that we really don't have a lot of time to spend on the other sewers, unfortunately. So our goal is every 5 years to flush every 12-inch diameter and smaller sewer at least once over that time. Unfortunately, over the last 5 years, about 2/3 of the sewers we haven't even gotten to. just because we spend so much time in Greece, trouble and stuff. So master plan really tried to figure out, okay, how can we start achieving this goal? So we basically need to, adjust utility billing so that we can generate an extra 330,000 a year to basically give all these remaining segments to a contractor to use. Then the other picture on the left, that's the SLRAT. That's like a little tool that we use also to see, it uses an acoustic signal that it sends. You put a upstream and downstream manholes and it sends that acoustic signal, and then that will give you a score. And based on that score, you'll know if you need to flush it or not. So it just detects if there's a blockage in there. So you can use that to help you decide, well, whether a line needs to be flushed or not. But the downside to it is you also need traffic control because sewers are always typically in the middle of the road and stuff. So you can't just, have that sitting out there for 5 minutes, traffic going by and stuff. This exhibit shows the reported sewer backups since 1991. So you can kind of see they're pretty cyclical. But they're, overall, they're pretty low because, based on national benchmarking standards, a good goal is to have 193 backups per 1,000 miles of sewer per year. That'd be considered very good. And so if you adjust our, remember we're 459 miles, so that would be 92 backups, 1,000 miles. Therefore, we're, way under that benchmarking goal. So that means we're doing pretty good. And some of this is how data has been reported by staff and turnover. It kind of changes a little bit and stuff. So most of these backups are on the private side where people's homes have issues and stuff. Asset management, that's really critical to public works departments, making sure you're documenting all the assets you maintain and when you're maintaining them, how much it costs you, keeping records of all that stuff. And then so we're really national leaders in that front. We use this cartograph asset management system. So all our sewer mans are in there. We track all our maintenance activities. It has when the install dates were, when they were relined, when they were retired, when we flushed them, when we mined them, when we TV'd them, everything. We track backups in here, everything now. So for example, you click on a sewer main in the county and see the work history, and then it also calculates a life expectancy, and you can kind of prioritize your replacement program based on that. We also use a program called IT Pipes. That's where we put all our CCTV footage. So that sewer on the left there, you can kind of see that that's one with a grease problem. You can see those grease marks after it was flushed. It leaves those stains and stuff. So, but yeah, and there you can see, basically our operators, they use an Xbox controller to move a crawler inside the pipe. And every time they see a defect, they take a picture of it, make a note of it, and assign it a score and everything. So we use so all our CCTV is electronically in there on the cloud and everything. And then it links up to cartograph. And so back to the master plan, I'll talk about one of the big things is just making sure you have adequate capacity for future growth and development. So as part of our master plan, we our consultant developed a dynamic sanitary sewer system model of all the county sewers. Previously to that, we had a sewer CAD model of just the larger diameter sewer. So this was a big upgrade. So we can click on any sewer segment of the county and see the flow, the dry flow, the wet weather flow, any kind of flow over the future conditions, the existing conditions. So it's really a really great helpful software. To calibrate and generate the model, they did a lot of flow monitoring in 2019, as well as using the water billing information from that period. So the water billing information that's used to generate the dry flows to know what's in your system during a non-rain event. Then the flow monitoring tells you how much basically I&I you're getting in your system during these rainstorms. The future conditions model, that's the 2045 future condition model. That's based on the COG, that's the Council of Governments. They publish a regional population land use model. So the one we used was around 9.1. And so that has the population employment figures for Arlington County that they project for 2045 based on all our approved land use documents and stuff. The only change we had to make was to add HQ2, because that wasn't quite. So based on what happened during COVID, that's now a very conservative model. So, but still we used it in our analysis. And then, For the wet weather, that's kind of your peak condition for sanitary sewers. So for that, we use the 10-year design storm for our capacity planning. It doesn't make any sense really to go. Some people say, why didn't you use the 100-year storm? All that extra water that you get there doesn't enter the sand. And sanitary sewer is a closed system, so it doesn't really, just because you have those defects, those cracks, that doesn't mean more water enters when you have higher intensity storms. So, so here's a shot from our modeling software. It's called PC Swim. So it's just kind of a shot of what it looks like. It's really easy to use. It gives you a lot of great information. The model found just really great results that county is like excellent in capacity with tons of capacity. Probably because of all the decreased water use and all that over the past 30 years. But it showed special capacity both the existing and future dry weather conditions. We only had one simulated overflow in the 2045 wet weather conditions. Overflow is when sewage would be shooting out the top of the manhole. And then we just had 3 surcharging sewer segments in the 2045 wet weather conditions, but they still had more than 1 foot of freeboard. So what that would mean is nobody would actually be backing up in those 3 spots because it would all be below where the buildings are connecting to the pipe. So I'll talk about where the overflow simulated that. So that was on North Oakland Street, just south of North Glebe Road. That's kind of where that's like kind of up near Ethan Allen Pump Station off Military Road. So that's where our Gulf Run force main outfalls into gravity sewer. So we actually have plans right now to upgrade that pipe so that we can resolve this issue. So that project will start construction in spring of 2024. And lastly, I'll summarize our action plan recommendations. So these are developed more detailed in the actual plan document, but basically we want to achieve that grid program. So we want to increase our operating funding by $330,000 a year to do that. We want to add fleshing all our 15-inch, 18-inch diameter sewers once every 5 years. That's actually not very expensive, like $33,000 a year. Our crews don't really touch anything larger than 12 inches because it's just there's so much flow in there, and it's just so it's just very toxic and everything. So we use contractors to do the larger diameter stuff. You really don't need to flush things larger than 18 inches because there's just so much flow in it that it keeps it clean, unless you get some huge blockage or something. But the contractor has great equipment to flush the 15 and 18 inches, and it's only $33,000 a year. So we thought that was a good thing to add. We'd like to accelerate our large diameter inspection from 2.1 miles a year to 4.4 miles a year, just so we can, over the next 20 years, see all the remaining large diameter pipes that we haven't looked at. Large diameter inspection, it's more difficult because there's so much flow in the pipe that you almost have to bypass it to get a good shot of the pipe. If you do it under flow, you're only going to see like half the pipe, so you're going to miss a lot of defects and everything. We'd like to implement a more robust manhole rehab program. We have a stream crossing inspection program right now that we look at stream crossings about once every 10 years because our sewer is drained by gravity. Streams are the natural, that's basically where gravity dictates water flows. So we have lots of sanitary sewers that are within stream crossings and stream areas. So it's important to keep inspecting those to make sure these exposed sewer pipes that you see in Gulf and Dallas that run that they're not leaking or at any kind of risk or anything. We'd like to have more consistent overflow reporting where we just have kind of standardized reporting so that when there's staff changes that it doesn't change numbers that overflows, that it's just a consistent amount. Periodically update design standards. We're already doing that. Our most recent standard update was just to require a tracer wire on house lateral so that sometimes contractors are building AT&T 5G fiber on the sidewalk, they might hit somebody's sanitary lateral and break it, but it's because it's not registered with this utility. So, but they have the tracer wire on it. The contractor for these communication companies would see it, and that would avoid that less. So that's kind of an example of our most recent standard update. So continue doing things like that. Continue enforcement of the fats, oils, and grease program, and update that as accordingly as as it gets older and stuff. Then just update the master plan again in 2033, which would be 10 years from now. Really our next steps are to hopefully do the request to advertise hearings this fall and then go to the county board for adoption at the December 16th meeting. You can provide comments on the sanitary sewer master plan by going below, or you could just Google Arlington County Sanitary Sewer Master Plan and it'll just take you right there. Then you can just email me your comments at jlawler@arlingtonva.us. If you have any questions about it, feel free to give me.
Thank you very much. Since now with any do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments about the proposed plan? I have a couple. Glad to see that you're now telling the story about our capacity and that you plan for the future on this. My takeaway on this, and you can tell me if I'm misreading it, is that at least through 2045, both our sewer system and our sewer treatment plant have more than enough capacity for the expected growth, population growth.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. That our sewer system itself is in pretty good shape, that we've actually been renewing it over the past number of years so that the large majority of sewer lines have been they're effectively new.
Yep.
Okay, good. That's good to know. So now I've also noticed when I go down 4 Mile Run on my trail that after the various storms, more and more of the pipes are exposed. Are those sanitary sewer pipes or are those storm sewer pipes?
Which part of 4 Mile Run are you on?
South Arlington.
Okay. Those are usually probably sanitary sewer ones. But yeah, we have a lot of manholes like in some parts of like the older trail and stuff.
Right, I see it's a column with a manhole on top.
Yeah.
Are you monitoring those to make sure the erosion doesn't end up breaking them?
Yep. Yeah, we monitor that. We had one where like a tree fell on it, damaged it. So, we continually monitor those.
Because I think they've also been like on Donaldson Run, some of them were exposed also.
Yeah. Just because they're exposed doesn't mean, there's going to be an accident, but typically what we're doing on Donaldson Run, we're encasing the exposed one with concrete. Donaldson Run, they're doing like a stream restoration project to kind of bring streams.
And back to water, so it's pretty clear that water usage, well, the sewer capacity, what goes into the sewers is dependent on the amount of water that people use in their offices, homes, schools, those sorts of things.
Yep.
It's the clean water that's pumped in that ends up mostly, not entirely, mostly going into sewers. So it is more population dependent than building. It's people dependent on how much water is being used.
Yeah.
That goes into sanitary sewers. And it's not really weather for the most part.
Yeah, no, because just in the summers, people water the lawn. That's
Okay. And again, that gets back to, given that our capita use of water has been trending downward pretty consistently for how many years? 20 years now? 10 years?
I mean,
Roughly
I would say maybe longer than that, but definitely like over the last 30 years.
30. So it's been quite a long time, and that's continuing to drop.
Yep.
Okay, so even though our population's increasing, our water use is decreasing, which means we still have, that opens up capacity.
Yep.
And that story is continuing. Looks like it, we don't see a reason for that to stop.
No, but on the flip side, though, it costs us the same amount of money to maintain the system.
Oh,
So,
of course. Yeah.
yeah, so it's great people are conserving water and all that, but then it kind of impacts the billing.
Well, I'm doing it more in, the reason I'm asking this is that we do get concerns. We've heard in any number of things with EHO, with Lancaster Boulevard, with individual projects that, are we sure we want to do this? Should we do a study to see whether we have capacity? Well, the point is you have done those studies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're talking about here, is that you have done countywide studies that show we have capacity. And that we actually have more capacity today than we did 20 years ago, to a certain extent.
Yep.
So our anticipated growth for any of these sources of growth will be accommodated by, at least by our water and sewer systems.
Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, in Langston Boulevard, that's split into so many different sewer sheds, depending on what part of that corridor you are. That's one of the reasons there's not a capacity issue with increased density along the whole corridor, because it doesn't just flow like west to east, or it's split in so many different areas. So it has very minimal impact. Then EHOs, I mean, we would love to, have more customers to, buy into our system and spread our project risk and stuff like that.
Okay, very good. Those are my questions. Yes.
I mean, I just appreciate the presentation and how several of these fixes are pretty low cost to the county. I don't really have any questions. I appreciate all the information. I really learned a lot. Thanks.
I had a quick question. If you're done.
No, go ahead.
So that event that you said about a year ago where a pipe broke,
Yep.
how do you, is that essentially like citizen dependent to alert you?
That one was, it was off like one of the wooden bridges on the, at that point it's the WOD trail, but I think it was between it was just north of Columbia Pike, just at north of Sparrow Pond area. But yeah, somebody saw a tree leaning on a manhole and they took a picture and sent it to us. And so, yeah, I kind of if you see any sort of sewer issue that looks like or water coming out of the street, you're supposed to call 703-228-6555, and then that's how you can report it to us. But yeah, for the WOD trail, sometimes people are the first ones because that trail is so much.
Okay. Yeah, I actually agree that the cost of them is quite modest for the size of this county and what we're getting. There's a lot of bang for the buck for that sewer rehab project and the manhole projects and all of those. Kudos. It's working. Okay, any further questions on this? Thank you. We look forward to hearing you at the before the planning commission.
Great, thanks.
And that concludes, do we have any public comments for this sanitary sewer portion of the LRPC? Do we have anybody signed up on the chat? And there's nobody in the room here who's looking to talk.
Also,
There it is.
There's someone who has their hand raised, but.
Someone has a hand raised. Without a name.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, since I haven't heard from anybody otherwise and no one has signed up, I declare the sanitary sewer LRPC closed, adjourned. We'll now turn the meeting over to Commissioner Sarli for the Plan Langston Boulevard portion of this meeting. Before you start, though, I do want to note that I am president of the Langston Boulevard Alliance. I'm also a planning commissioner. I'm here tonight as a planning commissioner. Any comments that I make tonight will be as a planning commissioner and not in my capacity with the Langston Boulevard Alliance.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you, John, for the great presentation. That was very thorough. We didn't have any questions, so good. With that, I think now we roll into ZOCO. I'm not going to do any introductions and or any preambles, so I will hand it over to staff for their presentation.
Great, thank you. My name is Kelly Brown, and I am a section supervisor in the comprehensive planning group in the planning division here in Arlington County. And I have been supporting the Langston planning process during the entirety of the planning process. Tonight, though, I'm here to present staff's considerations and recommendations for general land use plan amendments, master transportation plan amendments, and zoning ordinance amendments as implementation items for the adoption that would go along with the adoption of the Langston Boulevard area plan this fall. So I will provide an overview, some background on the planning context for Langston Boulevard tonight. I will present the general land use plan amendments, the master transportation plan, and zoning ordinance amendments that we're recommending. I will walk through some next steps, some follow-on work we're recommending, and to discussion. So as I'm sure you're all familiar with, we have been looking at the Langston Boulevard corridor over the course of several years to develop a new plan for the corridor. This is the entirety of the planning area, shaded in dark gray, with the distinct neighborhood areas indicated in these boxes on the screen. And we have been in this planning process for several years. We are drawing near to the end, at the end of phase 3, drafting the plan, and really moving into refining the plan and recommending plan adoption, which also is recommended to include certain implementation items to allow for the plan vision to be realized. And that's what we're here to discuss tonight. The planning process has resulted in a plan vision that's being recommended in the plan. I don't necessarily need to go through all of this material. I think it's been presented in the past at different LRPC meetings and in the draft plan. But I did just want to mention it tonight, that it's really anchoring what we're recommending in terms of general land use plan amendments, sustainability, environmental resilience, and equity at its foundation. There's also policies and recommendations in the plan in distinct issue areas: land use, economic vitality, housing, public schools and facilities, building form, historic and cultural resources, and then with regards to the public realm, transportation, connectivity, and urban design, public spaces, and sustainability and resiliency. The plan also includes design guidelines and principles that should guide future reinvestment on the corridor. So the plan does have specific goals for each of those topic areas. There's a specific goal for land use to transform the corridor into a vibrant green multimodal main street for expanded land uses and density. There are goals for housing to expand equitable housing choices. Goals for built form and height. Goals for transportation, connectivity, and urban design. Really transforming the corridor into a complete street that connects with the surrounding neighborhoods and increasing transit use. Goals for the public space network to ensure that the community is connected to and well served by a diverse mix of public spaces, balancing community needs. And goals for sustainability and resiliency, also within the theme of creating a green corridor. And meeting goals for conserving and expanding tree canopy, reducing energy use and emissions, and managing stormwater and promoting water quality. So the implementation items that we're here to talk about tonight are really intended to communicate the new planning vision for the Langston Boulevard corridor, and the policies and recommendations on the general land use plan, or in the general land use plan and the master transportation plan. And then secondly, to amend the zoning ordinance to encourage reinvestment consistent with the plan, vision, and goals. And the focus of these recommendations is within the core study area, which is the area identified in the plan as recommended for change over time. And where the plan, vision, and the goals correspond. So as we look specifically at the general land use plan amendments, they fall into 4 main categories that we're recommending. The first would be adding a new Langston Boulevard planning district to the general land use plan. And this would, as I mentioned before, encompass all areas within new planning vision, both the mixed use district and the residential district as they've been identified in the plan. And this would be accompanied by new text in the general land use plan booklet, articulating the vision and the goals for this area. We are also recommending to add Langston Boulevard as a planning corridor to the back of the GLUB map as a 4th planning corridor in the county. The second category of amendments would be adding open space triangles to identify the locations of all planned open spaces. The third category is to remove the housing conservation district designations that currently exist on the corridor where there's overlap with the new Langston Boulevard district. And the purpose of this change would be really to help clarify the plan goals for these areas that we are seeking to maintain the existing residential nature, but promoting increased density to expand housing choices, increase supply, increase committed affordable units, and also achieve other plan goals. And then finally, we are recommending to adjust the Cherrydale Revitalization District, consistent with guidance that came about during approval of expanded housing options. So we are not studying Cherrydale as part of this planning process, but through EHO, there were recommendations for a very targeted change to remove certain parcels from the Cherrydale Revitalization District to allow for expanded housing options. And just to provide a little bit more detail on that specific recommendation, expanded housing options is not permitted within planning districts identified on the general land use plan, and that was really intended during EHO to allow those planning districts to continue to be focused on achieving the plan goals in those area plans and have expanded housing options be a new option in the area in all other lower density residential areas. During the expanded housing options approval process, certain parcels were identified within the Cherrydale Revitalization District where change is really unlikely to occur given adjacent mixed-use redevelopment. And EHO may be a preferred choice for those homeowners for reinvestment. And so there was a recommendation during EHO to study and propose changes through Plan Langston Boulevard to really address that issue. And so consistent with that recommendation in EHO, staff did take a closer look at the Cherrydale Revitalization District and has identified 18 parcels where it would be appropriate to remove them from the Cherrydale Revitalization District because they are adjacent to areas where redevelopment has already occurred, additional change is unlikely. And so this removing them from the district would then allow for housing options. So these are the maps that we would recommend, we would request to advertise as changes to the general land use plan with planned adoption. And they indicate in red the location of the new Langston Boulevard Planning District, the addition of public space, the general locations for public space, the black triangles, and then the removal of the housing conservation district planning districts that are outlined in black on these maps, and those are proposed to be removed. And this is for, it's a very long corridor, so we kind of divided it up over 3 areas on that side, and then Area 5 West and Area 5 East on this slide. Again, these areas show in red the proposed addition of a planning district for Langston Boulevard, addition of open space triangles, and removal of housing conservation district areas that overlap with the new planning district. The next part of the presentation covers our master transportation plan amendments that we're recommending, and Kristen Hawkins from DES Transportation is going to cover these slides.
Hi, everyone. Kristen Calkins, as introduced. So we're going to be making some modifications to the MTP as well to support and integrate the recommendations that have been made in Plan Langston Boulevard. The first is related to the MTP map and areas planned for new streets. We're going to represent areas on the map that show kind of that we want to see a new grid created in our activity areas for the plan. The second is for areas where we're planning bike lanes on Langston Boulevard where we hadn't in the past. Those are on 2 different segments. One is from North Quincy Street, Military Road to Old Dominion Drive, North Culpeper. Nope, that is not right. My apologies. One is from North Quincy Street to Old Dominion, and then the other is from North Culpeper to North Lexington. Those are places where in our cross sections, we think there's space, there's room, one through just repainting and reconstruction of the roadway and its existing right of way, the other through expansion of the right of way through redevelopment for bike lanes to be accommodated. If we want to move to the next slide, we can show what the draft versions of these maps look like. So on this zoom in, you can see that we have the areas in hatching here. These are the areas that we anticipate new streets will be implemented through new development. One of the things we're not doing is we are not putting those new streets on this map. So there are no planned streets shown on this map. We want the ability to look at the plan for guidance, but to have the flexibility when development comes in to make sure that we're making streets work for the time and place that we're in through that review process. And then the next slide will show where we're adding additional bike lanes. So I'm not driving, but if you can take a look at the map, you'll see between that new hatching between North Quincy and Old Dominion, and then you can't even see where the new hatching starts, but at North Culpeper to North Lexington, the dotted bike lanes have extended for the recommendation on the map.
Thanks, Kristen. So this last category of implementation recommendations is for zoning ordinance amendments. And with plan adoption, we're recommending 2 zoning ordinance amendments. The first is to permit townhouses by site plan only in the RA 1426, RA 818, and RA 615 zoning districts in the Langston Boulevard Planning District. And the reason for this is that townhouses are currently permitted by site plan only in housing conservation district areas. That is to encourage the conservation of the existing multifamily housing in those areas. When we remove the housing conservation district areas within the Langston Boulevard Planning District, townhouses with no other actions would become a by right use again. And staff is recommending this zoning ordinance amendment to reinstate that site plan only permission for townhouses, because townhouses by site plan only would limit forms of development inconsistent with plan goals, better achieved through multifamily housing. So moderate to higher levels of residential density really helps support urban and pedestrian oriented streetscapes, consolidated public open space, and a coordinated multimodal planned street grid. The second zoning ordinance amendment is that we're recommending at this time is to amend the preamble to the CO 2.5 district. And that's really only to clarify its application. Right now, the zoning ordinance indicates that this district is appropriate in metro transit corridors. And we are recommending to revise that to say planning district. So its application is broader and consistent with actually how it's currently used and how we anticipate that zoning district may be utilized on Langston Boulevard into the future. So before we conclude, there are a few items that are still to be addressed as we think about MTP and zoning ordinance amendments. The first item to highlight is the need to consider the appropriate GLUP designations and zoning tools that would best meet the plan goals. So right now, the existing general land use plan designations don't support the building heights and the densities and the plan goals that are recommended in the plan. So new general land use plan designations would be appropriate to allow for the plan vision to be realized. And so there's several considerations that staff is looking at as we identify what would be appropriate for future general land use plan amendments. The first is what are the general land use plan designations that best communicate the future vision for plan goals in the mixed use district and residential district areas. We also want general land use plan designations to set clear expectations for appropriate zoning districts, the application processes, whether that's a use permit or a site plan, that should be used when reinvestment is sought, and also expectations and opportunities to realize base and bonus density to achieve plan goals. We're also looking at the designations that best maintain affordability in areas of existing market rate affordable units, which we refer to as MARCs, yet also provide sufficient incentives to create committed affordable units to replace MARCs. And finally, we're looking for we're looking at designations that really correspond with existing zoning districts to the extent practical. So looking to really use zoning districts that already exist rather than needing to create a new zoning district as we have done in other areas. Acknowledging, however, that we may need to create some new or adapt some existing zoning tools in some limited circumstances. Particularly, for example, in areas of lesser change where a new use permit tool rather than site plan only may be appropriate to support reinvestment. So with those considerations in mind, it's the designations that we're looking at vary by the degree of change that's anticipated in these areas. In areas of greatest change, both in a mixed use district and a residential district, we're looking at medium OAH, but we're also looking at low OAH in the mixed use district areas and high medium residential as well in the residential districts. In areas of lesser change, we're looking at low OAH, service commercial, or potentially no change at all. And that's in the mixed use districts. In the residential districts, we're looking in areas of lesser change at potentially low medium residential, or low OAH. So there's lots of options on the table and really evaluating the pros and cons of each. Also important to mention at this time is that we're not considering proactive GLUP amendments, so we're not recommending at this time to change the GLUP amendments. And this is really given zoning ordinance affordable housing expectations associated with applicant initiated GLUP amendments. However, we are considering the creation of a future GLUP map within the final area plan to help establish expectations for private property owners in terms of what would be appropriate GLUP amendments to request with redevelopment application. In terms of new zoning tools, and I alluded to this when I was talking about GLUP designations on the previous slide, these are also still under consideration and something that we would study after plan adoption. The first is the creation of a new use permit tool for areas of lesser change to facilitate reinvestment. We're also going to recommend looking at opportunities to facilitate near-term interior alterations and expansions, identifying if there's barriers in the zoning ordinance that hinder that sort of reinvestment. And then there may also be some additional amendments that we need to pursue dependent on final GLUP designation recommendations. So in terms of next steps, we are going to recommend bringing forward an initial package of amendments with plan adoption. And those are the ones that that we presented tonight for the GLUP, the MTP and zoning ordinance. And then we are going to continue studying GLUP designations and appropriate zoning districts and tools. There is potential for a recommended future GLUP map with plan adoption, and new zoning tools, however, will be recommended for additional study after plan adoption as a near-term implementation item. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Thank you, Ms. Calkin, for the presentation. I guess now it's with the committee. Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Plenty, but go ahead, Jim.
No, then why don't you start?
Well, okay, and I'll preface this with saying is that recently, newly appointed member of the Planning Commission. But Kelly, so the last point you were just making about not making a lot of these GLUP designations. So can you walk me through that? So I'm thinking about the plan. I'm thinking about what is actually going to be in the RTA here. So like, again, this is sort of a layman's question, but like thinking about these different districts, then if we're not going to be making GLUP changes, then you know, are these what we have on the map in the proposed plan? Like, are we locked into some of these building heights and some of what's on the map? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so the plan will provide the guidance for what's appropriate.
Okay,
And the plan will also have a CLUT map in it
okay,
that reflects what in the future we think would be appropriate.
okay,
So when applicants come forward with proposals for redevelopment or reinvestment, the plan would provide the guidance for what is the maximum allowable height, what sort of densities are appropriate, what are the plan goals we're trying to achieve in terms of affordable housing, open space, and what are the club designations and zoning districts that we think would be appropriate to request with your redevelopment application.
but we're not making the changes now because we want to maintain flexibility.
There is an expectation in the zoning ordinance that there are contributions to affordable housing.
Right.
With a change in a general land use plan designation.
Right.
So.
I sort of want to preface this first because what we're talking about here is something that will be going forward for the request to advertise, the RTA. Which means that what we're talking about is what is the outer limit of what the county board will be allowed to consider. That they could recommend something less than what is in, but they can't go beyond that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is generally,
I think
yes.
we probably would have to, fully consult with the county attorney's office on that question
On specific things, but in general, this is the way RTAs work.
in general, but I think that we would always want to double check with the county attorney's office to confirm, which perspective is considered outer limit.
Right, because I know some things, we're not quite sure how that would work.
Yeah.
So yes, I appreciate your caveat on that. Where we say we're going to be looking like CO 2.5, we're going to be defining that as being, this corridor would also be allowed to use the CO 2.5. That means that for RTA purposes, could we then later on consider creating a new CO Lancaster Boulevard the way we have CO Roslyn, CO Crystal City?
If that was something that we wanted to recommend, we would need to bring that forward as a specific request for advertise.
Okay, so right now we're deciding that CO 2.5 is our outer limit then, consideration.
Well, at the moment, we're not recommending any general land use plan amendments. We are potentially going to be recommending what could be appropriate designations for an applicant, a private property owner to request as a change. So we're not really locking ourselves into anything. We're just kind of recommending what we think would probably be appropriate in the future.
Okay.
And an applicant could come forward with something different. It's really the plan, I think, that would be providing the policy guidance for the board to consider.
Yeah, and just to go back to one of the things that you showed on the last slide, in the areas of greatest change, where we are looking at heights, you had it 7 to up to 15 stories. There's potential for medium office apartment hotel, but there's also potential for high medium residential. So that comes, at a density level greater than the medium office apartment hotel, which is tied to CO 2.5. So I don't think that we are at a fully solidified recommendation at this point, and we're trying to move forward.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that we're not locking ourselves in, that CO 2.5 is the max.
Right.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned heights also. The heights that then are mentioned in this, are those also the outer limits for heights at the various spots along the corridor for RTA purposes?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so we say in some spots it's 5 to 7, that's 7 is the max under the RTA, that we then could not say, oh, with bonus, you can go up to 10.
Well, I think we've been pretty clear with the community that we are establishing a heights map that we see as the appropriate height maximums in the corridor. But I think it's important for us to communicate here tonight, and as we move forward, as we have this conversation, that the board has the ability to deviate from the heights, as this is just policy guidance. And at the moment, we are not intending to bring forward any zoning regulations that would in fact codify these heights in a way that the board would lose that ability to, you know, in extraordinary circumstances to consider additional height. But again, what we've communicated to the community is that our recommendation is these are the maximum heights.
Okay, but the county board could also decide that it wanted to limit itself if it so chose. The way I think we have in courthouse, there are certain hard caps that even the county board has decided it cannot then break through. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
So that is still an option.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. We mentioned TDRs in here, which is great in the staff report. We're happy to see that. Could we, and we list a number of reasons that TDRs could be used. Could we have beyond those mentioned, would we be limited to TDRs to those things that are mentioned, or could there be other uses such as open space? TDRs.
So we've identified study of potential for transfer of development rights as something, an area of future study. We're not going to be bringing forward any specific recommendations related to TDR. So that's
We're not
definitely, we're not limited at this time.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Again, what I'm trying to raise here is for RTA purposes, so we have a full understanding that where we're limited and where we're not. So that's good to know that we saw flexibility there. Thank you. Ms. Culkin, are you still there? I have a couple of questions for you.
I'm here.
Okay, great. First off, Langston Boulevard between, essentially between Roslyn and Spout Run or I-66, is there provision for bike facilities along that wide part of Langston Boulevard on the MTP?
So that is,
There's
if
lots of
someone
right-of-way.
can pull up, and I'm trying to pull it up on my screen. Before I say something that I need to double check, there are already bike lanes planned on Langston Boulevard along that segment.
Right,
We've
and
got the
already
blue.
is one. There's
So yeah,
one that's
if you
already
take
striped.
if you zoom in on this slide, you can see that there are already the blue hashed lines on Langston Boulevard there that are
Okay, great.
included in the map.
Great, thank you. That's good to know, because I wanted to make sure that we still were taking advantage of that extra right of way there. When you mentioned the other ones being added, those two other sections, which again, I support, I think it's a good idea. Are we talking about simple stripes on the road the way we have in Cherrydale, or are we looking at some sort of separated?
So
bike facility?
the map itself here is not that prescriptive. It just says that we're doing on route bike lanes. That's something that through the design process, we have cross sections in Langston Boulevard that we're recommending, but the map itself is not that prescriptive. It gives us the bike lanes are planned here, and in the future, we get the opportunity to implement bike lanes because of that on a VDOT facility.
Great, thank you very much. For the cross-hatched areas, which again, I think this is a good idea. I'd like seeing those. Within the draft plan itself, we have shown certain areas that where streets could go or would go. The crosshatch clearly does not mandate those being in those spots. So we can be comfortable in saying that the draft plan, by showing those routes, those are one possible option, but not a requirement that they be located where they are. So for RTA purposes, this is considered a minimum, but we could, in the future, put those streets somewhere else or not put them, depending on what plans come forward and what makes sense for that particular site.
Yes. DES's perspective is that by not prescribing streets, we actually give ourselves the most amount of flexibility in the future.
Great, thank you. That's good to know. That was also the answer I was looking for. So thank you very much. Let me see. I just want to confirm what we were saying, that with the marks, by saying site plan only, that will then lock us for RTA purposes into site plan for townhouses where there are those I forgot the term. Yes, housing conservation.
So right now, in housing conservation district areas, townhouses are permitted by site plan only. What we are recommending is the removal of those HCD areas because the guidance for Langston Boulevard is kind of superseding the previous guidance for those areas. Yet we still believe that townhouses by site plan only is the best choice for this planning area, because townhouses are by right, townhouses would not allow us to achieve our plan goals for this area. It would limit our ability to get coordinated open spaces, urban street fronts, and a form of development that just really meets our plan goals.
Okay, good. I want to make sure that everybody understands how that
Yeah.
works. And turning to Cherrydale, those few sites in there, under the current Cherrydale area plan, those sites could have been redeveloped into something way more dense than what's on there now. Is that correct?
Yes.
So by our removing them, we're allowing more density that actually would be somewhat less density than what could have been built there anyway, under the Cherrydale district, by even allowing EHO, which is what we're doing, is effective. We can then allow more density there, but less than what otherwise would have occurred in the Cherrydale revitalization district. Theoretically. Okay, good. I just want clarification on that. So good, that's good to know. Right now, that's what I'm thinking right now, so.
I just, associate myself with the sentiment of, retaining the site plans for these, these three districts that you mentioned, Kelly. I think that that's right. I think it still aligns with what we were thinking back in 2017 when the district was established. So I think that's sort of the way to go. I also think that we need to be thinking about ways to maintain, some of what we already have there. And so that it does make it a little bit more difficult if it's going to be site plan only for redevelopment. We thought about that on Columbia Pike as well. CAFs are important, but we're thinking about housing, especially affordable housing. It's much easier to preserve sort of what you have, if it's, working. One question I do have is, in one of the implementation strategies, you talked about a special exception approval process in areas of lesser change up to 5 to 6 stories. So I just have a general question there, which is, I know that, some folks along the corridor are sort of concerned about legacy businesses, or concerned about some of those areas where, retail is. Are we concerned that if we basically provided a streamlined process, maybe we're not concerned, maybe it's a different policy goal, but I'm not sure everybody necessarily wants to see those shopping centers immediately turn over. So are we worried about maybe by making it a little bit easier through a streamlined site plan or a use permit that we might kind of turbocharge some redevelopment there? Maybe some folks wouldn't necessarily want to see that happen. It was a big question.
Well,
Really? I didn't break you on that one.
I think what this plan is offering is a variety of choices. And it's not just a one size fits all, a full redevelopment. And whether that's in the multifamily area or the commercial area, getting to a place where even renovation, infill, building expansion is possible, but let's do it in a way that's not just through the result of what the by right development option, would allow. So would we start to see some transformation of the corridor, and some would say, let's keep everything as is. I'm sure that certainly will be a sentiment of some, but I think that to fulfill the multimodal vision and trying to expand access for all modes of travel, to bring more households and residents to the community that can help support some of those businesses in their existing form, or possibly if they find a new shop front. I think, those are the objectives that we see as possible, and still would see positive.
Yeah, Eric, part of my understanding, being involved in this for over 10 years now, is that we have a lot of very small holdings up and down the corridor. And going through site plan to develop a very small site just doesn't make economic sense.
Sure.
Most property owners just won't do it. If we want to get some of the benefits we'd like to get from this, the only way to do it is by incentivizing property owners to go ahead and redevelop their properties in some form. Site plan is tough, and I think what we had been advocating as a community was, can we find a way to allow this that is less expensive for the smaller holders? You know, where we can't have consolidation of lots that make it viable, but if it's small, is there some other way we can do? I don't know whether there's an answer for that. I think that's what staff is wrestling with.
Sure. I'm gonna bring it up because I don't, I'm not putting my thumb on the scale. I'm maybe struggling with it. 'Cause I think, you know, Jen put it well. It's this idea of folks wanting a corridor that has a certain vision, but in order to do that, change has to occur, and change is hard, and change is ultimately gonna mean certain things come and go. And so that's, you know.
And what are the realities of the current areas? We have great retail up and down it, but a lot of them are small businesses or individually owned businesses. And a lot of them are reaching the point where a lot of those proprietors are wanting to turn the reins over.
Right.
Don't have anybody who's willing to take it on. We do.
So like,
It's going to be, the point is, it's going to be changed no matter what.
sure. I mean, so this is something that you all are gonna look at, you know, so you don't have anything fully baked, but you know, when I look at like streamlined site plan, I think of like maybe mini form-based code kind of thing, something predictable. If it's like less than 5 or 6 stories that come in, you're trying to give predictability, I guess is what I'm saying, and to reduce these soft costs for these folks. So
Yeah, we're not wedded to a fully administrative process.
Sure.
For a variety of reasons, but you know, every site's different. The conditions may not meet a level of precision that's required with administrative regulations. So
Sure.
therefore, they may come to the county board needing modification, and think that, you know, that some level of community review or input into applications is still a worthy objective. So we've got a number of tools, you know, that are lighter, but they still require an application process, a review process, and what we're indicating is a public hearing process. So I think that will, in exchange for some of the things that meet the plan goals, like the building in the right place, you know, our thoughts around parking and some of the public improvements. And I think that will spur change, but will it rapidly spur change? You know, probably not, because it's still a very challenging process to, you know, just decide to make those change and you think about that level of coordination with your neighboring properties as well.
sure, I appreciate that.
Chair, I have a map question. The map or area. Great. One of the open houses, one of the property owners that abuts the core area wants to actually be included in the core area. Do we know whether that change has been made? It was a single family house property. They saw it, no, not Cherry Hill. Not Cherry Hill. No, it wasn't Cherry.
I think Natasha's on the line. If maybe she can
You
answer
think
that
that
question.
change was made?
I think
Sure.
Natasha's on the line, if she can answer that question.
Hi, Natasha, you know the one I'm talking about behind Metro?
There were a few, Jim, that we talked through, and the ones that you pointed out, you and others at the LBA that you pointed out were included for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I needed to know. Thanks,
Yeah.
Natasha.
No problem.
I have a similar clarification question on maps and sort of the outlines of the heights and how you sort of implement that. Like, let's say, you know, half of a property is on like a 10-story and the other half is on a 7-story. Where do you, like, you know, how do you arbiter that line when push comes to shove?
So happy to answer that. So we have very specific recommendations for step backs, depending on whether you're adjacent or across the street from low density residential edges. And those step backs, there are setbacks, of course, right, for the ground floor and for the podium part of the building, but the step backs are also very specific in the guidelines. So really, when you're looking at a site, you have to look at the overall dimensions of the site, and as long as the building conforms to the step back requirements, we're just going to be looking at those dimensions specifically for a site and making sure that the building follows the minimum distances that are prescribed there.
I think I understand. So you're saying that like the map is illustrative, and at the end of the day, it's more about like streets and setbacks from.
Right, so the
plans.
maps are just illustrating the general height zones. And for the most part, they follow the step backs. But you know, some sites are more, they're just a little bit more like unique, let's just say. So the
Yeah.
recommendations provide more clarity to that. So if you have a site that's, let's say, 200 feet, as long as your building is set back, if it's abutting, it's one distance. If it's across the street, it's a different distance. And so it really depends on whether you're abutting across the street from a low density residential edge, or if not. And there are very specific recommendations for each of those conditions.
Yeah, and just to add to that, that some of that additional guidance in the text is in chapter 4 in our guidance, our guidelines, excuse me. So the map is a visual, and then that's supplemented with some guidelines in chapter 4.
Perfect. Thank you both. I think the scenario that I had in mind was like this very skinny little sliver that ends up being like a much higher height, you know, given sort of lot widths or something. And so I was just wondering how we would navigate that. But I think this is very helpful. And I'll
Well,
go
if
back.
the site
this.
cannot accommodate a functional floor in the zone that we've, let's say, allocated for 10 stories or higher, then they just won't be able to accommodate that.
Okay, that's also very good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, one definitional thing. We're now creating a corridor the way we did for Ross and Ballston and for Richmond Highway. So it does include Cherrydale and East Falls Church. So we will essentially be from North Highlands to East Falls Church. All 5 of the areas will then be defined as that corridor.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
So I'll follow up on that. So first of all, it's been there all along. We're just finally recognizing it. But can you sort of explain a little bit why we're calling it an area and not a corridor? I think there was something on the presentation that we're not calling it a corridor.
It will be identified as a planning corridor on the back of the general land use plan,
Okay,
for consistency with the rest of the corridors, the Ross and Ballston corridor. The plan itself is being called the Langston Boulevard Area Plan. And I don't know if,
I think that's pretty common for how we've named plans in areas where we weren't otherwise specifically calling for a revitalization plan. And then also we've reserved the term sector plan for those stations, specifically at metro stations.
I see.
Got it.
Okay.
So this area plan will comprise of the 3 currently unplanned areas of the corridor. The North Highlands area, then the other 2 to the between Cherrydale and East Falls Church. Okay, good.
Right, and again, because we have adopted policy in
For those
place
other
for those other 2 areas.
Anything else?
I think you've answered my question.
No, I mean, other than just to say again, because there's only 3 of us here, but the explanation of how this works as far as the GLUP, I think be needed for our colleagues. Because I certainly was getting tripped up here, but I appreciate it.
yeah, the plan draft, the draft plan that comes forward for the RTA and the staff report will clarify the approach.
Even more so than what indicating.
able to say tonight. Yes, yes. It's
But I wouldn't be surprised if at planning commission,
Yeah.
things we talked about here are raised yet again.
Right, right.
So be
Right.
prepared for that.
That's what I looked at Jim to.
understood.
Yeah, I think that's good. And then this is coming before the planning commission in October.
With the request to advertise.
Okay.
And then again, at the end of October, 1st of November for final action. Because we do the request to advertise first, and
Right.
then we'll come back for your final recommendation that would go to the board for final action. So that would be for your meeting associated with the November county board meeting.
Perfect, thank you. Not seeing any other comments. Do we have any public speakers that signed up? And then how do we do? We do digital first or?
Everybody in chat.
All right, Ms. Katie Wenger. You have two, sorry. Can you
Yes,
tell me-
hi.
All right, you have 2 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Katie Wenger, and I'm a member of the Housing Commission, but tonight I'm speaking on behalf of Voice. Voice is an interfaith community organization that advocates for social justice issues in Northern Virginia. And we've done many listening sessions among community members who are burdened by the unaffordable cost of housing in Arlington, especially families of color and immigrants. And many are being forced to pick up and move to other areas or paying unsustainably high percentages of their incomes on rent. In fact, according to a new report, over 50% of residents of South Arlington struggle to meet basic needs like housing and food. These issues are also affecting teachers, healthcare workers, and other essential workers. So it is critical that the county act now to address the severe shortage of affordable housing in Arlington to prevent further displacement and to promote equity. Plan Langston Boulevard is a major opportunity to do this, and we are supportive of the overall goals of the draft plan, but the current draft plan falls short of achieving these goals. So the county must revise the plan to align with the Affordable Housing Master Plan by ensuring that 2,500 committed affordable units are included along Langston Boulevard. These units must be committed affordable to households under 60% of the area mean income, because market rate affordable units are likely to disappear over the years. There are several ways to achieve this goal. The first is by allowing higher density, which will promote more affordable units through the site plan and bonus density process. It also lowers housing costs overall. So we encourage that the recommended maximum heights be increased. There's also other ways to do this, which I didn't have time to cover, but thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much. Alice Hogan.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Alice Hogan. I am with the Alliance for Housing Solutions. We have been following this plan for several years. And a huge shout out to so many staff members who have brought this plan to where it is today and will guide it to its fruition. We commend the vision that is here, inclusivity, sustainability, equity, crucial elements for the future of Arlington, and that are, part of this plan that was really bringing in community ideas and feedback. We know we need tens of thousands of additional housing units in Arlington, so this corridor is crucial to help us realize to fill that gap. This is a bold plan for the next 50 years, so we need to keep it as open and flexible as possible, because we don't even know what we will need then, but we certainly know we need a lot of intentional development, mostly in the housing realm. And if we provide that flexibility and maximum potential for capacity along the corridor, we know that is the way that affordable units will be able to be produced within this range of thousands of units. As the previous speaker said, we're looking for a minimum of 2,500 CAFs among those new housing units. That will not even meet the needs. These needs are reflective of data from 2013, so it is an absolute minimum. East Falls Church and Cherrydale are crucial to bringing this total, and we need the county to commit to reviewing and bringing those two plans into alignment immediately, not in 5 years. To think of where you can get from EFC to, Dulles, National, Greenbelt, you name it, and we have a parking lot there is just unfathomable. So I encourage you to encourage staff and the board to consider as many tools as possible to help us achieve as much housing as we can on the corridor. And thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. All right, I have 3 names on the list for speakers here. All right, I will start with Ms. Alice Toole.
Hi,
Hi.
can I go ahead?
Yeah,
Okay.
2 minutes.
Sure. I'm Alice Toole. I'm the pastor at Clarendon Presbyterian Church, and I live in Barcroft. And where I live in Barcroft, so many of my kids' friends, they live in apartments that are too tight, and they either have to move somewhere else, way out, or into Maryland or into DC, or they have to jam so many families and so many kids into a single apartment. Kids sharing beds and bunks, and it is unsafe, and it is a terrible way to live. But families love Arlington, and they love the good work opportunities, and they love the good schools. And we need more CAFs. We need 2,500 minimum. And I look at the great schools that are on Langston Boulevard. Williamsburg just got an award, a Blue Ribbon Award. And we need more units there for families to live. I remember when they were moving families out of the Serrano because the conditions were so terrible, there was no place to move families. Then we look at our seniors, and seniors need housing too. They're most rapidly growing segment. And then in my congregation, I'm losing young adults because they're moving somewhere else because the rent is too high. And they may not be in committed CAFs, but they need more. We need more housing in Arlington. Thank you. And I really commend the staff's work on all of it.
Great, thank you, Ms. Toole. Having a little bit of a hard time reading this. Ms. Jolie.
That's me, the report member.
No, sorry. All right, 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jolie Pillsbury, and we live in that little corner of the corridor that's right abutting what many of you know as the former Marriott Key Bridge area. And I would like to really thank the staff who have listened to us and talked and engaged us and educated us and been responsive to our interest in having more new neighbors, but in a way that sustains the livability and in many ways the affordability of that particular corner of the boulevard. It is our understanding that currently we sort of meet the density and the affordability and even the diversity goals that are the vision of the plan in that little corner. And our big concern is that because that land is so precious, the development that occurs there will not create affordable housing. It will actually push out the affordable housing that already exists in that corner. So we believe from a long-range planning commission perspective, there might be an opportunity to combine the goals of sustainability with the goal of affordability. For example, we know that the county has not invested or created incentives to transform existing buildings into either residential or other purposes because the environmental impact of taking an existing good structure and not completely demolishing it and rebuilding it, that environmental impact is less than completely destroying and building anew. And I truly am requesting that the Long Range Planning Commission consider as one of their recommendations that if you're looking into the long range future, you consider that sustainability has many different elements. Last thing I would like to say is that we believe that access to nature is important for all families and the mental health of people of all ages. Our little tiny strange part of Roslyn, which we love, actually has access that is being provided by our private paths that get into public land.
Thank you, Ms. Pillsbury. And then the last speaker is Mr. Aaron Roberts.
Hi, Aaron Roberts. I'm just going to echo a little bit of what Joe Lee already shared. I agree 100%. Our neighborhood supports everything about the planned Langston Boulevard vision. This entire corridor will grow, and it should grow. And I hope that a lot of that growth will seed affordable housing. I think the only concern that we've had consistently is a question of proportionality. And on that topic, I'm very impressed by the intimations and directions that we've seen from county staff. A return to, I think, the implicit wisdom of the preliminary concept plan from summer of 2022. And I would also like to commend staff and also recommend to the Planning Commission that a special attention be given to the step back and setback guidelines from the draft final plan. Those are especially useful, especially as new development is considered along low density residential edges. So just to conclude, want to thank everyone for their time and the vision and all the hard work. I know it's tireless and sometimes feels thankless, but I'm here thanking all of you for all of your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's all the public speakers we have. Not seeing anyone else. I don't think there's any next steps, right? This is it for ZOCO today. This is coming from the Planning Commission in October. Just covered that and I'm forgetting already. So that's it. Well, thanks everyone for coming out to the meeting today. Thanks staff for the great presentation, for the great work. Thanks John West for the earlier LRPC section. That was very good. And with that, have a good night, everyone.